I was sleeping soundly in the middle of the night when water splashed on my face. I wiped my face, turned on the light, only to find a large water stain on the ceiling. This was the third time this month. In order to save money, I rented the top floor of an old residential complex. Besides the cheap rent, everything else was not good. After leaving a message for the landlord about the water leakage at home, I quickly packed up and went to the upscale residential complex next door. With the financial support of my rich friend Linda, I was able to purchase this house. Once inside, I grabbed my pajamas and headed straight to the bathroom. After freshening up, I crawled into bed. Just as I lay down, I sensed something was off. There was someone next to me. Why are you sleeping in the guest room instead of the master bedroom? I murmured in confusion as I turned to hug my friend Linda. But as my hand roamed down and encountered something indescribable, I quickly pulled back. Wait, Linda, did you undergo a gender transformation? Just as I was pondering this, a deep, magnetic voice came from above. Molly, you really went to great lengths to seduce me, didn't you? The voice sounded familiar. Anxious, I turned on the light and saw the handsome yet stern face of my ex-boyfriend. Why are you here? I quickly covered myself with the blanket. But as I tugged the blanket, Jackson's body revealed itself. Realizing I was in my pajamas, I awkwardly returned the blanket to him and prepared to leave. Before I could turn around, Jackson pulled me back, pinning me down. He gritted his teeth and said, "You come and then want to leave? Do you think I'm easy to mess with, Molly?" Confused, I asked, "What do you want then? What do you have in mind?" Jackson, despite his anger, remained unfazed with his handsome face. "If you want, you can have me," I said, closing my eyes, ready to accept whatever was coming. But Jackson chuckled, "Sorry, I'm not interested in you." As he was about to get up, his foot got entangled in the blanket, and the next moment, he harshly crashed onto me, his thin lips sealing mine. "Is your house leaking again?" Linda's loud voice rang out as she opened the door, only to be shocked by the scene inside. Apologizing for the intrusion, she quickly left, saying, Carry on, carry on." Wait, Linda, you got it all wrong." After half an hour, I found myself in Linda's bed, moving from Jackson's embrace. Linda, wide awake, stared at me with gossip-filled eyes. "Are you dating my brother? He's your brother?" I was surprised. "How come?" I looked at Linda's chubby face and then thought of Jackson's devastatingly handsome face. I shook my head, not at all. Who's better looking, him or me? Linda asked, to which I quickly responded, "You, of course." Satisfied, Linda sat up and asked bluntly, "So spill it, what's going on between you and my brother?" "What do you mean, what's going on?" I asked, confused. "He didn't tell me he was staying at your place, so things got a bit complicated." Linda clearly didn't believe me. "My brother is not the type to hang out with women. If someone else got in his bed, he would have kicked them out a long time ago." Realizing I couldn't talk my way out of it, I reluctantly confessed, "Okay, I'll come clean. He's my ex." "Your ex?" Linda was shocked. How did I not know about this? Jackson and I dated in college, before I met Linda at work. After clarifying the timeline, Linda uttered a shocked, "What a fuck, so, you're the ex that my brother loved and lost, the one that almost cost him his life?" I was puzzled. "What do you mean, his life? Wasn't he okay with the breakup back then?" Linda's furrowed brow could have killed a mosquito. "What are you talking about? You don't know, during that time, my brother was like a different person. He, who was usually diligent and proactive, shut himself indoors, looking frail and gloomy, losing weight. It took him several months to slowly recover, but he still seems harder to get along with now. Jackson was a renowned cool and handsome guy in school. After the brief encounter just now, I felt he was indeed colder than before. But I never expected it was because of me. How did you break up with my brother?" Linda asked, her curious eyes glittering. "It was simple. I wanted to see a movie, but he said he didn't have time. After I watched the movie, I broke up with him. He agreed, and we never contacted each other again." Surprised, Linda responded, "So plain?" I nodded. "That's how it was." "So Linda, is it possible that another woman broke your brother's heart, not you?" My speculation was quickly dismissed by Linda. "No way, he only had one girlfriend, and if it wasn't you, who else could it be?" After gossiping for a while, Linda yawned and lay down to sleep, her demeanor suggesting she was the boss of sleep. I lay next to her, unable to sleep. I met Jackson in my freshman year. Handsome and academically outstanding, he was called the campus hunk. Many girls liked him, including me. Though many pursued him, only I persisted from freshman to senior year. Finally dating in my senior year, Jackson continued to be aloof and distant in our relationship. He seemed to have no demands, but as our relationship changed, I longed for more closeness that he never reciprocated. Eventually, I grew tired of it all. So after that movie night, I ended things. His response was flat, just a simple okay. After our breakup, I got drunk, thinking Jackson would be relieved without me. But Linda mentioned that he was also hurt. So, maybe, deep down, Jackson did like me too? A ripple of emotion stirred in my heart, but quickly subsided. Whatever happened back then was in the past now. A year had gone by. The next day, as I woke up, Linda was already gone. She had been busy with her new love life, coming and going early and late every day. I yawned and went to the bathroom to freshen up. Upon pushing the door open, I was met with a strong man's chest. "What's going on?" I was puzzled. Rubbing my eyes and opening them again, I saw Jackson, now wrapped in a towel, looking at me with a stern face. "Molly, were you trying to seduce me again yesterday and now today?" Surprised, I found myself face to face with Jackson while he was showering. Embarrassed, I apologized and quickly turned to leave. But Jackson grabbed me by the back of my neck. "You keep saying you walked into the wrong place. Do you really think I'll believe that?" Although it seemed absurd, Jackson's accusation left me puzzled. "When do you usually shower? Why so early? And are you deliberately choosing this time to surprise me?" Jackson chuckled. "I shower early not because of you." "What's it to you?" Perplexed, I tried to understand his words. In a lowered voice, Jackson explained, "Do you know who sneaked into my bed last night, causing me to lose a night's sleep?" His voice had a low, alluring tone that made me blush. So, Jackson showered to refresh himself. Realizing this, I dared not meet Jackson's eyes and seized the opportunity to flee. Not until I was back in my rental home did my heated heart cool down. The landlord had arrived to arrange for repairs. We found that the water leakage last night was due to accumulated rainwater from a recent storm. The type of water didn't matter. What mattered was that nearly every corner of the small room was leaking. In just a month, my bed had been moved around, leaving only one clean spot. After helping the landlord move the bed, I sighed. If there was another leak here, I feared I might have to move out for real. I kept myself busy washing sheets, airing out the blankets, and cleaning the room the rest of the day. It wasn't until nighttime that I finally sat by the window to work on some design sketches. That's when Linda called. "Molly, why did you move back again? Why not just stay with me?" She reassured me that my brother, Jackson, had spent the night there but would be leaving as the house nearby was being cleaned. "It's okay, Linda. I can manage here for now." After promising to move if there was another leak, Linda hung up, leaving me feeling warm inside. I met Linda at work. Initially, just ordinary colleagues, we soon became the best of friends due to shared interests in a harmonious atmosphere. Recently, Linda and I were both being ostracized at work for our outstanding performance by the senior staff, so we decided to quit together. After losing our jobs, Linda enjoyed her life, ready to inherit part of the family business at any time. On the other hand, I used my year of work experience to take on some freelance design projects at home. The progress was delayed during the day, and I stayed up until 2 a.m. at night before finally falling asleep. Just as I was in a deep slumber, I suddenly felt a chill on my feet. Startled awake, I wondered if there was a leak again. I quickly grabbed a basin to catch the water, moved the bedding aside, and couldn't help but find the situation both miserable and somewhat comical. Should I be thankful that this time the water didn't leak onto my face? In the long night, what could I do? The only option was to seek refuge with Linda again. Since Linda had said that Jackson was only staying at her place for a day, I figured I wouldn't run into any awkward situations if I didn't encounter Jackson. I hurried to the neighboring community. Upon arrival, I was about to head to the guest bedroom to sleep. However, when I placed my hand on the door handle, I noticed that the guest bedroom door was closed, just like the previous night. Normally, with no one living there, the door should have been open. As a precaution, I decided not to sleep in the guest bedroom that night and chose Linda's master bedroom instead. Crawling into bed, I embraced Linda. In the next moment, I felt a jolt all over my body. What's going on? These firm muscles, this familiar touch. I turned on the light and sure enough, I was met with Jackson's deadpan stare again. This time, I took the initiative. What are you doing here? Isn't this Linda's bed? Time and time again. Jackson, are you going to say it's just a coincidence again? His look of "you're pretending, keep pretending," made me incredibly frustrated. Why else? Could it be that I can't resist your beauty? His tone paused momentarily, and a shadow crossed his face. Bringing up the past made me feel a bit embarrassed. I awkwardly touched my nose. I'm going to find Linda. As I prepared to leave, but couldn't open the bedroom door after several unsuccessful attempts, Jackson walked over. After failing to open the door, he frowned and looked at me. The door was fine before. Why is it broken after you came in? His words carried a deeper meaning, as if everything was meticulously designed by me. I was on the verge of losing it. Without thinking, I blurted out, maybe I have no self-control when it comes to your beauty, but can I orchestrate all these coincidences with my brain? Good point. Jackson nodded in agreement. You indeed lack that kind of brain. I clutched my hips. Jackson, why are you in Linda's room? Are you here just to catch me entering the wrong room? Jackson had a faint smile on his lips. Is it possible that I'm afraid you'll crawl into my bed again, so I switched rooms with Linda? So the truth of the matter is that I was afraid Jackson was in the guest room, so I went to the master bedroom. And Jackson was afraid I would go to the guest room again, so he went to the master bedroom. And then we both ended up in the master bedroom. Who can we blame? Of course, it's all Linda's fault. She said her brother had left, didn't she? I grabbed my phone, called Linda, and asked her to come and open the door to let me out. However, after the call ended, Linda didn't pick up. As expected. That girl always had her phone on silent while she slept, and she slept so deeply that she couldn't be woken up by any noise. Unable to leave, I had no choice but to turn back to look at Jackson. But Jackson was already back in bed. He must have known I couldn't reach Linda and intentionally took the bed before me. I walked to the edge of the bed, gazing at Jackson in dismay. Even though he had his eyes closed, his keenness would surely sense my approach. Indeed, Jackson turned over, facing away from me, unmoving. He showed no intention of giving up the bed to me. Since you're unwilling, then I will. With determination, I lifted the blanket and lay down next to him. Under the same blanket, I could clearly feel his body temperature rising where our skins touched. As the temperature increased, I couldn't help but recall the scene I saw in the bathroom early yesterday morning. My cheeks grew warm. I realized this couldn't go on. If I couldn't control myself, Jackson would surely look down on me. But I also didn't want to sleep on the floor. In one fell swoop, I reached out and felt Jackson's abdominal muscles. If I provoked him, he would surely leave. His body tensed, but he remained still. As my hands became more audacious, ready to do as I pleased, he grabbed my wrist. Molly. Still claiming it's not intentional? I felt a lump in my throat. This time, it was indeed intentional. It was intentional, so what? Can you really resist me until you swallow me whole? Previously, when I entered the wrong bed, Jackson had clearly stated he wasn't interested in me. Now, either he would let me do as I pleased on the bed, or I would sleep on the bed, and he would sleep on the floor. After staring at me for a moment, Jackson reluctantly released my hand and got off the bed. He took out a blanket from the wardrobe and laid it on the floor. He would rather sleep on the floor than share a bed with me. I felt a slight sense of loss, but at the same time, a strange satisfaction. The prodigy Jackson sleeping on the floor, and me on the bed, felt really good. That night, I slept soundly. The next day, I woke up to find my soft bed had somehow become hard. Blurry-eyed, I opened my eyes and saw a disproportionately handsome face in front of me. It was Jackson. Damn, I knew I wasn't very honest when I slept, but I hadn't expected to fall from the bed to the floor. And to top it off, I fell on top of Jackson. I tried to get up from Jackson's body, but quickly realized that if I moved, he would surely wake up immediately. And he would probably accuse me of doing it on purpose. So, I decided to remain still and see what unfolded when Jackson woke up. When Jackson woke up, I could frame it as him pulling me off the bed. With that thought in mind, my gaze couldn't help but linger on his face. His features were exquisite, sharp, and flawless from up close. His lips were tempting and sexy. I licked my lips and couldn't resist slightly brushing them against Jackson's. Hey, are you sick? Why haven't you gotten out of bed yet? Linda's voice suddenly came from outside, startling me. Panicked, I tried to get up immediately, but the next moment, I found myself in the same predicament as Jackson. The blanket wrapped around my waist, and as I tried to get up, I toppled onto Jackson's body. Hey, aren't you going to move? Or did I really crush you? No worries, my hand is numb, he said, struggling to stand up with support from his left hand while his right arm remained immobile. Watching his slight movements brought back memories of that summer. During our university days, Jackson's favorite place besides the classroom was the library. Being confined to the library all day was torture for me. But whenever I saw Jackson's handsome face, my fatigue vanished. We spent every day together in the library. When I was reading, he was reading, and even when I dozed off, he was still reading. Several times, I slept leaning on Jackson's arm, and when I woke up and told him to leave, he would only say, "Wait a moment." After a few minutes, he'd stand up, pick up his book, and make the same movements with his hand as he did now. Reflecting on it now, if my arm trapped his for hours, it might have been numb back then too. He didn't mention it, and I didn't notice. I just thought he wasn't nice to me. Occasionally, when he offered a helping hand, what was wrong with that? Realizing my gaze, Jackson stopped moving. I snapped out of my reverie and left the room. After freshening up, Jackson left too. Linda gleefully linked arms with me. Great, Molly, I was worried about having a difficult future sister-in-law, but with you, I have nothing to worry about. It's not like that, Linda, you see, I and your brother. Before I could explain, Linda continued, all right, I understand. It's fine, and she left, leaving me dumbfounded. Sighing, I returned to the rented house. This time, even the landlord himself seemed embarrassed. Molly, I'll refund you the remaining rent. With all the leaks happening every day, my rent is barely enough to repair the roof. I really needed to find a new place to live. But as a first-tier city, the rent here was certainly no joke. Although I was close friends with Linda, I didn't plan on living with her. Because I cared too much, I didn't want any factors to affect our friendship. So, I contacted a real estate agent to look for a new place. The places the agent showed me were relatively more affordable studios. Never did I expect that during the house hunting process, I would run into Linda. Standing next to her was a handsome man, looking simple compared to Linda's branded outfit. He must be her recent boyfriend. When Linda saw me, her eyes widened instantly. Molly, you're out looking for a house and not planning to stay at mine? We're done as friends, she said angrily, although her cute doll-like face made her look more adorable than intimidating. She came over and playfully pinched my ear, and I quickly raised my hands in surrender, saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Seeing that she couldn't stay mad forever, I changed the subject and looked at the man. Don't we get an introduction? Linda snapped back to reality, immediately shifting from fierce to shy, and introduced the man. This is my boyfriend, Calvin. She then introduced me to Calvin. This is my best friend, Molly. Hello, we greeted each other. This room looks good, and the price is reasonable. Calvin, why don't you rent this one? Linda asked Calvin. However, Calvin replied, if your friend needs it, give it to her. I will find something else. Linda affirmed, she doesn't need it. She's staying at my place. And just like that, Linda made the decision. I wanted to pay Linda rent, but she adamantly refused. That was the reason I hesitated to stay at her place before. I could only save the money for now and planned to buy her a designer bag she likes for her birthday. Linda wanted to help me move with Calvin, but I declined. Since my childhood friend Mike had some free time, I asked him to come over and help with the move. The two of us carried a suitcase each, along with a large snakeskin bag, and laboriously moved everything to Linda's house. As soon as we arrived, we collapsed on the floor, both exclaiming, so tired. So exhausted. Gazing up at the ceiling, catching my breath, I suddenly saw Jackson's face. Thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me, I closed them and then opened them again. His face was still there, even clearer. It was indeed Jackson. How could he be here in broad daylight? I quickly sat up. But a sudden pain shot through my forehead as Jackson covered his chin. He gritted his teeth. Molly, if you can't seduce me, are you plotting against me? He was right there with me. Mike chimed in. All flirty. Admitting that I indeed bumped into him, I had to apologize. Jackson grabbed some documents and left the room, giving Mike a stern look before closing the door behind him. With the door shut, Mike rubbed his arms. Molly, I felt like that guy just now wanted to knife me with his eyes. I furrowed my brows. Did he? Did he not? Mike retorted, how would I know when I wasn't even looked at? Hurry up and help me pack my stuff. Saying that, I started dragging a sack towards the room to move things. Mike stood still, then pointed towards the couch I was sitting on and towards the door. "Molly, are you cohabitating with that guy from earlier? What's going on?" Momentarily confused, I realized that Jackson did exit the room we were in. Although Linda mentioned that Jackson was just staying temporarily, I felt a bit anxious and decided to call her to confirm. "Relax, Molly. I checked with my brother, and he left to stay at his own place starting today." "Are you sure? You said the same thing last time and it didn't turn out well." "This time, I'm sure, trust me." With Linda's assurance, my anxious heart finally settled. After moving everything, both Mike and I were exhausted. I handed him a bottle of water, saying, "Thanks." He chugged down half the bottle in one go and looked at me, saying, "Just a bottle of water and you're sending me off? How about making some instant noodles with sausage for me?" I agreed, and as I headed to the kitchen, the noodles were all ready, and Mike received a phone call. Without even eating the noodles, he hurriedly left alone. I had to enjoy 2 bowls of noodles myself. I had to admit that with a better environment, my inspiration for designing seemed to flourish. After a busy afternoon, I stretched lazily and got up. After taking a shower and wearing pajamas, I snuggled on the couch in the living room, eating watermelon, watching a variety show, feeling relaxed. Suddenly, the door swung open. "Linda, you're back. Come watch TV." I gestured towards the direction of the door without shifting my gaze from the TV. Sensing Linda sitting beside me, I scooped up a large spoonful of watermelon. "Try it, it's really sweet." I offered a bite to Linda, or so I thought. It turned out that the person sitting beside me wasn't Linda but Jackson. By that moment, the spoonful of watermelon was already near Jackson's mouth. Facing my shock, he remained surprisingly nonchalant. Opening his mouth, he accepted the watermelon, and to my surprise, he ate it using my spoon. My face flushed, heart racing. Why are you back here?" "Linda said you'd return to your house," I stuttered. Unaffected, Jackson replied, "My house has leaks, too. Can a high-end neighborhood costing tens of thousands per square meter have leaks?" While Linda was my close friend, she was also Jackson's sister. Regardless, I couldn't just kick Jackson out. So, we agreed that he would sleep in the master bedroom while I took the guest room, ensuring that there would be no mix-up. My guarded stance seemed to irritate Jackson slightly, as his expression turned colder. "Just make sure you won't sleepwalk," he remarked. "Of course not," I assured him. Since Jackson arrived, I didn't stay in the living room but returned to the bedroom. Sitting on the bed and checking my phone, my hand paused when I noticed that the spoon Jackson used was there. Unconsciously, I accidentally took a bite of the watermelon using the same spoon. Feeling my heart race, I hastily set the spoon aside, feeling like a total weirdo. But I brushed it off, finished watching my show, and decided to hit the bed. Suddenly, the quiet university classmates group chat became lively. Peeking at a few notifications, I clicked into it. "Hey classmates, it's been almost a year since we graduated. Should we have a reunion party?" Fiona proposed, quickly gaining support from the more active classmates from our school days. Fiona tagged Jackson, and others joined, expressing their excitement if Jackson were to attend the gathering. As soon as Jackson's name was mentioned, the group chat became noticeably more enthusiastic. It was clear that everyone was looking forward to his presence. Back in school, Jackson had always been a unique figure in our class, with exceptional personal and family background that made him unrivaled. Soon, Jackson responded, "I have other commitments that day, so I won't be joining the fun." His decline dimmed the enthusiasm in the group chat. I silently observed. Most of the people I was close to were in different cities and couldn't make it, so I decided not to attend as well. Hence, I stayed silent in the chat. After graduation, everyone went their separate ways, making it rare for us all to gather in one place. Eventually, the attendees were narrowed down to just around a dozen classmates thriving in the same city. As the list of attendees was finalized, Fiona unexpectedly tagged me in the group chat. "Molly, it's been so long since we've seen you. Join us for some fun." Fiona led the invitation, followed by others echoing the sentiment. "Hey Molly, long time no see. It wouldn't be the same without you. You coming or getting all fancy on us now, looking down on your old classmates?" As everyone chimed in, I felt pressured. It was Nick's message that made me relent. Molly, it's been so long. I wonder how you've been. I finally relented. All right, I'll come. The day of the class reunion, I took a bus to the venue. Fiona had booked a private room at a 5-star restaurant, indicating a high-end celebration. Upon my arrival at the private room, some classmates had already gathered, chatting and laughing around Fiona. Their topic of conversation revolved around Jackson. Fiona heard Jackson inherited their family business? Not yet. Their family business is massive. Jackson wants to hone his skills first before taking over. He started his own small company, and although it's only been a year, it's doing really well, Fiona casually shared. Wow, impressive. The classmates exclaimed before someone gossiped, Fiona, any progress between you and Jackson this past year? Of course, my parents have had a few dinners with his parents, so I believe it's only a matter of time before Jackson and I officially get together, she revealed confidently. As her words settled in, other girls in the group sighed with envy. Standing at the door of the room, I wondered if this was the right time to go in. Just then, Fiona noticed me. Molly, come over and join us. She warmly gestured, making it seem as if we were extremely close friends. But back in our school days, we were rivals in some ways. Fiona also liked Jackson, but she didn't have the courage like me. After I successfully pursued Jackson, she secretly teamed up with others to target me. I reported to the counselor several times, but it was of no use. In the end, I don't know if she had a change of heart on her own, or if she just stopped bothering me. I walked over and sat down. Molly, have you found a new boyfriend after being dumped by Jackson? Fiona's simple words made my fists clenched. It was a peaceful breakup, but they distorted the truth, making it seem like I was dumped by Jackson. As if this could satisfy their inner expectations and self-deception. If it weren't for Nick's sake, I wouldn't have come at all. But since I was here, I reluctantly got through this class reunion. No, I haven't, I said. Upon hearing this, Fiona smiled, as expected. After all, having seen someone as outstanding as Jackson, how could they still set their sights on someone else? But Molly, don't set your standards too high. If you want to find a partner according to Jackson's standards, you might just end up single for life. It's important to have self-awareness. You come from a rural background, don't dream of transforming from an ugly duckling into a swan. Fiona's words successfully fueled my anger. I was about to retort when someone hurried over and stood in front of me, blocking me. It was Nick. His honest face turned red, angering Fiona. Fiona, we are classmates. There's no need to target Molly like this. Nick was genuinely upright. While others would fear Fiona's wealth and status, he didn't. Back in college, every time Fiona targeted me, the only one who stood up for me was Nick. Fiona had intended to push Nick aside, but Nick was honest and everyone was pleased with him. Moreover, Jackson also supported Nick as the class monitor. That's why I decided to attend this class reunion when Nick asked me to. The only person I wanted to see at this class reunion was Nick. Seeing Fiona being scolded by Nick in front of everyone for targeting me made her lose face. She looked at Nick and said, since you're protecting Molly so much, why don't you two just be together? You seem like a good match. Bringing up relationships, Nick obviously didn't know how to respond and was left speechless. I stepped forward at the right moment, saying, whether Nick and I are a good match is one thing, but you and Jackson are definitely not a good match. Just a friendly reminder, it was me who dumped Jackson, not the other way around. Fiona, I thought you were powerful. Who would have thought that a year has passed and you still haven't figured out all the men I've been with? My words left Fiona flushed with anger. She pointed a trembling finger at me. Molly, stop talking nonsense. Whether others know if I'm lying, don't you know yourself? After all, when I was dating Jackson, you used to sneak and spy on us. Molly. Exposed in public, Fiona was completely enraged. Today, I will shut your mouth once and for all, she said. With her long-nailed hand reaching for my face. Instinctively, I dodged but was a bit slow on the uptake. At the critical moment, a clearly defined hand suddenly reached out and pulled me into its embrace. Almost as soon as I caught a whiff of the scent of mint, I knew it was Jackson. Sure enough, when I looked up, I met Jackson's deep gaze. Are you okay? I couldn't help but feel that his eyes and tone couldn't hide their concern. I'm fine, I shook my head. He then turned to Fiona. It seems you've forgotten the warning I gave you in college. Did you forget how many times our parents had meals together? Don't worry, whether it's true or not, that won't happen again. His words hit hard. Fiona's face turned pale in an instant. Jackson frowned and cut her off. Please call me Jackson. If it weren't for your past actions against Molly, I wouldn't even know you. So, we're not at the stage where you can use a nickname. This blunt statement embarrassed Fiona even more. The atmosphere became awkward. Nick, once again, had to intervene to ease the tension. Well, Jackson is here. Let's sit down and have a meal together. Jackson didn't respond and looked at me. Do you still want to eat? I don't want to. I shook my head without hesitation. Then let's go home, Jackson said as he took my hand and walked out. I could feel how intense Fiona and others' gazes were towards me at that moment. Even though Jackson's let's go home was probably interpreted differently by them. Nevertheless, I have to admit, that feeling was quite satisfying. In the car, I looked at Jackson and couldn't help but ask, you weren't Fiona back in college? He replied softly. Why didn't you tell me? Before, I thought Fiona had simply gotten bored and stopped bullying me, but it was because of Jackson that he didn't say, and I didn't ask. I thought he knew Fiona was bullying me but chose to overlook it. That once fervent heart gradually cooled. This time, Jackson pursed his lips, remaining silent. Just when I thought he wouldn't acknowledge me. He sighed softly. 1. I didn't think it was necessary. 2. I didn't want you to bear the burden. At his words, I was taken aback. Indeed, I was quite sensitive back then. On one hand, I wanted Jackson to stand by my side. On the other, I didn't want to trouble him. In front of him, who was so outstanding, I always felt like the one dragging behind. Knowing Jackson's actions back then made me feel unexpectedly sad. How much better it would have been if I had known a year ago. Would I have held on to Jackson's hand tighter then? Unfortunately, there are no ifs. A difficult to express silence filled the car. Thanks to Jackson's intervention, I was feeling good. I made a decisive move to cook dinner myself. After finishing cooking, I served a dish to Jackson. Try it, is it good? My eyes filled with expectation. Certainly, I already had an idea of the answer. In college, I would make soup for him to drink in the dorm using a rice cooker. When I asked him if it was good, he said, okay. Still good, Jackson said, as expected. It seemed like he never really liked anything I did, right? Just as I started feeling dejected, Jackson spoke again. I find it delicious. I never expected your cooking skills to be this good. This was the first time he had complimented me like this. It was just a simple statement, but tears welled up in my eyes. Proudly, I raised my chin. Of course, I'm amazing. After dinner, Jackson took the initiative to clean the dishes in the kitchen. Watching him wash the dishes awkwardly, a smile formed on my lips. I was suddenly inclined to stay together in the same space. To ease the awkward atmosphere, I turned on the TV and played my favorite variety show, inviting him to watch it with me. I laughed along with the show's energy, while Jackson seemed hesitant beside me. Unable to bear it any longer, I paused the TV and looked at him. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't make me feel like I have an incurable disease where you don't know how to speak. As soon as the words left my mouth, Jackson raised his hand and patted my head. Stop talking nonsense. Ouch! I pouted and held my head. Jackson's face tensed as he approached me. Does it hurt a lot? Seeing his cautious expression, I felt my eyes moisten. Did he actually care about me? It's just that before, all I saw was his fierce side, without sensing his love. Are you crying from the pain? He moved my hand to touch my forehead. The warmth transferred from my forehead to my heart. Blinking away the tears, I looked up at Jackson. So, are you going to tell me now what you wanted to say? This time, Jackson didn't hesitate. He softly said, I saw the man who helped you move that day with another woman, behaving intimately. You mean Mike? Isn't it normal for him to be with another woman? Jackson's brows furrowed even more tightly. Don't you like him? Who likes him anymore? The one I liked was. I almost blurted out, which made us both look away in sync. Panicking, I explained, Mike is my brother, same mother but different fathers. We are both from the countryside. After his father passed away, my mother remarried my father, while he stayed in his original family. We live in 2 neighboring villages and have always maintained a close relationship as best friends. Upon hearing this, Jackson stared at my face. It seemed like he quickly found the resemblance between me and Mike. then he spoke again. So, on the night you broke up with me, you went to see a movie with your brother? Why not? Movie tickets are expensive, and since you couldn't make it, I couldn't waste it, right? I replied subconsciously. After I said that, I realized something was off. But didn't you say you were busy that day and couldn't come? Under my questioning gaze, Jackson replied, that night, my tutor had something come up, which was supposed to end at 10 o'clock. I originally rejected you, but I couldn't resist and told my tutor a white lie to go see you. So, when you saw Mike and me going into the cinema together and waited for me to finish the movie to break up, you just agreed? This answer left me torn between being angry or laughing. It was just a small misunderstanding that led to our breakup. I returned to my room feeling somewhat angry. As I lay in bed wiping away tears, I felt a mix of resentment and frustration, not towards Jackson, but towards myself. In fact, both Jackson and I knew that even without the small mistake with Mike, our relationship was heading towards a breakup due to our communication issues. Mike was just a minor spark that ignited the inevitable. After our confrontation last night, it felt like the dynamics between Jackson and me had changed, yet at the same time, nothing had changed. We still lacked communication, but I often found myself lost in thought while sketching, with a cup of warm water with tea leaves floating on top next to me. My grandfather loved strong tea, and as a child, I didn't care much, so I often drank from my grandpa's large tea caddy. This habit led me to develop a love for tea. Throughout my life, I've always liked to throw a few tea leaves into my hot water. Speaking of which, Linda and I used to get along so well because we had great chemistry. One of those things was our love for tea. A hint of tea flavor was enough for both of us, no need for too much. I had told Linda before how I developed this hobby mainly from my grandpa, and I asked her how she did. She said it was because of her brother. She picked up the habit by imitating her brother. We both enjoyed stroking cats. She told me she used to dislike them, but her brother would send her cat videos every day and recommend her to visit the cat cafe. Back then, I didn't know her brother was Jackson, but now I do. A thought emerged in my mind. I tried to call Linda to verify, but I couldn't reach her. This was the first time she had been out of contact since we met. I grew concerned and decided to go look for her. The first place that came to mind was her boyfriend's rented house. While waiting for a ride, I unexpectedly ran into Nick. Unlike the last time we met, his face was no longer clouded with sorrow. Instead, it was filled with joy. Something good happened? I inquired. He nodded. My mom got sick and we needed money. Shortly after being laid off from my previous job, I was worrying about how to make ends meet, but unexpectedly, I received an offer from a big company a few days ago, with my salary multiplied several times over. Congratulations. I genuinely felt happy for him. Nick was diligent and talented, just a bit too honest for his own good. Nick smiled. Speaking of which, I have to thank you. What do you mean? I was puzzled. The company that hired me used to be Jackson's. I always believed that one should rely on oneself, but now I truly understand the importance of connections. Molly, I never even sent a resume to their company because I thought I wasn't good enough. Undoubtedly, it was Jackson who had me hired. And the reason he did it was because of you. Just because of the insignificant care I had for you during our university days, just because of a few low-key supportive remarks I made during a class reunion. Molly, he has always cared a lot for you and has done a lot for you. You just never realized it. As Nick walked away, his words kept swirling in my head. Jackson had done so much for me, which I never noticed. I felt an urgent need to see Linda and confirm my suspicions. I quickly took a taxi to Linda's boyfriend's rented house. The door was open, and I saw Linda sitting inside. Safe and sound. As I let out a sigh of relief, my heart clenched as I saw Linda's state. Her makeup was smudged from crying. She looked breathless and weak. Linda had always been full of vitality, and it pained me to see her like this. For the first time I gently embraced her. Linda, what's wrong? I broke up. I wanted to eat strawberry cake. But Calvin found it troublesome. He bought me the cake, then he broke up with me. I have so many houses, yet he insists on renting one just like you. I gave him an expensive watch, but he didn't want it. He even got mad at me for not wearing the gifts he gave me, but I just don't like those brands. Linda kept pouring out her grievances. By the time she finished, I understood the whole situation. Softly, I said, Linda, do you know? The strawberry cake you like is only sold in the neighboring city. With a simple phone call, a delivery person would bring it to you, but Calvin doesn't have the money, so he had to buy it himself. It was only after running to the next city to buy the cake for you that he realized that he couldn't always give you what you wanted. As for the house and expensive watch, you guys were only in the early stages of dating. The gifts you gave had a high value, and he couldn't reciprocate. He wasn't upset because you didn't wear the gifts he gave you. He felt like you didn't appreciate what he gave you. But I know you didn't throw them away. I saw you keep those things in your bedside table, looking at them every day. After hearing my words, Linda sat stunned for a moment before bursting into tears once again. I could tell that she understood what I was saying. It wasn't that she and Calvin didn't love each other, they just didn't understand each other. Just like how Jackson and I had been, one prideful and self-absorbed, the other insecure and sensitive. One unwilling to explain too much, the other always overthinking. Despite loving each other, they ended up breaking up. Once Linda's emotions settled down, I helped her up, preparing to leave. But as I turned around, I saw Jackson and Calvin standing at the door. Sorry, Calvin, Linda ran to him in tears. I was wrong, it was all my fault. No, I was wrong too. I should have overcome the difficulties instead of breaking up, Calvin replied. The two embraced tightly. I locked eyes with Jackson. Let's go home, he said to me. I nodded. As our fingers interlocked, a thought struck me. I didn't need to ask Linda about my doubts. I could just ask Jackson. Instead of opting for a car, we chose to walk. Jackson held my hand tightly as we walked for what seemed like a long time before reaching home. Once we were home, I asked him, Jackson, was our initial meeting, me meeting Linda, related to you? Looking back, it seemed too coincidental that I joined the same company as Linda right after her. I liked drinking tea with tea leaves floating on top, so did she. I liked visiting the cat store outside of work, so did she. We met more and more outside of work, becoming the best of friends. Even right after I rented a house, Linda bought a place in the adjacent area with the help of her family. Yes, Jackson nodded. You've always been careless, and I wasn't around, so someone had to take care of you. He deliberately made me become close friends with Linda to look after me through her. Tears welled up in my eyes as I couldn't hold back hitting him with my fist. Why? Why didn't you say anything earlier? My voice choked up, filled with sorrow. I wasn't just asking Jackson, I was asking myself too. Why didn't I ask more questions earlier? Why couldn't I speak up about my sensitive feelings? Why couldn't I consider things from Jackson's perspective? I'm sorry, I almost whispered the words at the same time as Jackson. The next moment, we both said, it's okay. We apologized for the hurts we caused each other, but accepted that the past was the past, and we had a future. We shared a smile. He wiped away the tears from the corner of my eyes, then gently pressed his lips against mine. Late at night, I sneaked into Jackson's bedroom. His hands roamed up and down my body. Unable to contain his excitement, he grabbed my hand. Did you purposely sneak into the wrong bed this time? If you did, I'll have to punish you.